Hello. In this video, we're going to make this rack, which you can hear is just your sort of standard glitchy type sound. But for the most part, you can see that the beat that I've drawn out is relatively simple. Like all of these, for example, so along this whole stretch here, those all just have the chance kind of down at like 30%, somewhere like that. And it's just a matter of whether they fire or not. There's two glitch sounds, a bunch of effects here. There's some weird roar stuff going on up here at the top, and then some relatively simple glitch sounds. And then altogether sounds something like that. So you can kind of even just do, I'll turn the chance down for all of them and then just duplicate them straight across. And it should be, yeah. So then if you were to take kind of a stronger, more standard drum kit over top of it. So the video is going to be kind of two main parts. The first part will be kind of doing the sound design and things like that on these bottom 8 cells. And then the next part will be adding effects and bus routing and things like that. This is a video, I've done similar videos like this before, but I wanted to make one kind of really taking time to go through and do things how I would normally do them, rather than sort of giving just vague ideas. If you would like, you can just download this rack on my Patreon if you don't want to kind of go through the whole process of making it. But as usual, I always recommend that you kind of try it and follow along patching, because you'll learn a few things along the way, and then also just kind of maybe change a little bit how you're thinking about drum rack. Okay, so first thing is the drum rack, obviously. And we're going to make all of our sounds from scratch. So rather than using DS Kick and things like that, we'll use mostly operator, but I think it's kind of the better way to go because you have more there to sort of modulate and tweak and things like that. So let's find an operator. I often get asked, things like what sort of effects chains am I using and stuff like that. And as I've mentioned before, a lot of times I do use effects, but often it's more about modulating the actual sound sources than it is using effects chains. Let's get something here and bring the transpose down, turn the pitch envelope 1, and increase the peak. And then I'll bring in some noise. I'm going to turn this down and bring in a roar. The resonance, that can add some sort of chonk to the low end. Right there, you can hear it's almost too much. All right. Yeah. Actually, the other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to switch these over to trigger. So that way it sort of rings out over top. Do the same with noise. Yeah. All right. That's our kick. And then we can actually just hold Alt and drag this over and use this same sort of template for the snare. So I'll move all these up. And all I'm really going to do is decrease the pitch, shorten the decay there, and give it some more noise. Maybe high pass? Yeah. And then a little bit more drive, and we'll turn it back down. And then I think I'm actually going to add reverb. Just a very little bit. Switch this to trigger? I don't really notice a difference, but whatever. And then I'll drag this over and use it again for like a sort of... So for that, select all of these and move them up. Just going to turn the noise off. Make this even tighter. Not that, this. And this. Might even do... So as I've talked about before, if you don't know, when you increase the resonance, it starts to self-oscillate, depending on the frequency. So you can hear it almost sounds like there's a second oscillator there. But you have to be careful with that because depending on how you adjust things, it's not really feedback, but it's kind of feedback. I'm just going to go something like that. And so on my machine, a lot of times I'll do things like just kind of flippantly adding an envelope to something like the size of the reverb. Just because it's kind of interesting. Sort of sounds like a squish sound. But the problem with that is these envelopes, Tom Hall actually recently explained this to me, that all of these are all still running, even though they're not mapped to anything, since it's just like sort of a poly system underneath of this. They're all kind of doing the same thing anyway. So these can be a little bit hoggy with the CPU. If you want, you can go in and edit the patch and delete all of these other ones so that there's just one. But either way, that's just kind of something to keep in mind. So I'm not going to do it here just to try and keep this, relatively light. But that's a thing that I often do when I'm making my own sort of racks is I'll have these things just sort of scattered all over the place because my computer allows me to do it. But it's really not necessary. Like that sound wasn't even good. It sounded like water squishing. And the reason I thought of that is because I was going to delete the reverb. And maybe some more feedback. Not too much. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Hi-hat. Let's move all these up. I'm not going to do the usual thing I do here with just straight up cheap white noise. I'm going to do a little bit of like ringing rim, if that makes sense. Oh, I messed this up. So here on the kick, this oscillator is actually modulating the kick, which I don't want. I just want a noise source and an oscillator. Same with the snare. No, the snare sounded fine the way it was. Yeah. And this one doesn't matter. Okay. So let's get rid of that. Maybe another one. Switch this to trigger as well. Are your dogs barking at? Yeah. And maybe noise here. We might actually be able to. Yeah, I like that. And I'm going to get rid of the roar and do a delay. Turn this up. All right. So now we have our kick, snare, rim, and hi-hat. Let's actually make a beat and see how everything sounds together. What happened? That's not right. And so now I'm going to copy this kick drum. And so this is going to be our just chonk kick. And this is going to be our random kick. And this will be our snare. Do it. Rim. And hi-hat. Okay, so for the kick, we're going to do, you can do this a couple different ways. The one way would be to sort of map all of this stuff up to macros. That way you can sort of find, you know, sweet spots that you like and kind of be very specific with how you control it. I'm going for more of just a, you know, random glitch beat type thing that I can just sort of drop in and let it run. So for that, I'm going to use expression control and just sort of randomize everything. So this one is, it's just the same thing. I just have it saved to where everything is already set to random. So I'm going to go for the decay, the noise decay, the pitch decay. What else? Maybe I'll go for the low end drive and the mid drive. And now I'm going to get rid of all this and just do our kick here. I'm going to add a few more hits just so we can sort of hear what it would sound like in a glitchy context. Awful. All right. So now that it's running and it's fresh in our head, what we've sort of assigned here, it's pretty obvious to hear what needs to be reined in a little bit. For starters, the pitch decay. So we'll turn that down and up. So that way the lowest that it can go is still going to be a nice snappy decay. The highest it can go will still be, you know, relatively snappy, but we'll get some sort of changing in the sound or whatever. Same with the noise decay. And most important, the oscillator decay. Yeah. And then a drive for the roar. It's very subtle, but this is one of those areas where we're going to be doing a lot of randomization and modulation and stuff. And if you go too extreme too quickly, you're just going to get something that's completely chaotic, which again might not be bad, but this sound is kind of, I don't know if it's technically more dynamic. Seems like it's, no, that's quite a bit more. So you can see all this sort of hopping around and stuff that it's doing. So we'll bring a compressor in and sort of chop some of that stuff off. The peak setting is, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's a lot clickier. The attack and release are much more apparent. Yeah. I think this is still a little too fast. Yeah. So the reason we duplicated the kick is so that we can still have a consistent kick underneath of that. Because that'll make it really easy to just sort of, you know, you could just do something like this and then select all these, come down here to chance and turn the chance down, or maybe even more often, something like that. This chong kick doesn't sound very good. Little too much on the reverb. Yeah. All right. I think I'm going to leave the snare relatively static the way it is. The rim, though, we can do quite a bit with that. It's sort of up to you whether you want to kind of keep a normal rim and a sort of random rim. I'm just going to do one random rim. And the reason is just because I kind of feel like rim is sort of a throw-in sound. It's just there to sort of do stuff, whatever. And it's not like, you know, the kick is very important to sort of have some structure there. Same with the snare, whereas the rim, it's not like you're really relying on that for any sort of impact, if that makes sense. So we can do kind of whatever we want with that. So let's get rid of these and find our expression control and swap it out for our random. And on this one, I'm going to do some sliding on the randomization. So this is going to slide the rise and the fall. And then we'll we'll kind of do relatively the same thing. Maybe we'll bring in some of these other oscillators, see what that does. Filter. And then go for the mid band on the roar. And then constrain some of this. Yeah, leave that there. You can hear what I was talking about before, that sort of resonance starting to sort of self-oscillate. That'll really stick out. So I'm just going to kind of pull that down a little bit. Yeah. And same thing, I'm going to bring a compressor in just to sort of tighten this a little bit. Do I want to add an effect in here? Yeah, let's add a delay before the roar. I'll leave ping pong off. Oh, but I'm out of randomizers. Yeah, we don't need that. Let's get rid of that. We'll randomize the delay. Yeah. Let's do something like this. And then we'll bring all these down here. Hey, why doesn't that work? Copy. Why can't I do that? I just want to copy these. Whatever. Oh, wow, that's so... Oh, I put it on 0%. And do our big kick. Yeah. Doesn't sound great, but like I'm not really doing much with the actual beat here. Like that's about as basic as you can get as far as what could potentially happen. Like at most you're going to get a 16th ratchet, which, you know. All right. Now what are we going to do? Yeah, let's make an open hat. So let's rename this CHH and this O. I'm bad at this. All right. Increase the decays here. Oof. I don't think I can do that. We'll just use the noise. That is so pokey. All right, then we'll come in here and put on 1 and O on 1. Not crazy about the open. Yeah, it's the delay. Also need to get rid of that. You don't need to get rid of that. That's something that I've talked about quite a few times before, where there is merit in adding a roar and a drum bus and a compressor and all of this sort of stuff on the top of your whole kit. So that way, yeah, you're not getting a clear representation of what the actual sounds sound like. You're hearing them through the roar and compressors and stuff like that. But then the sort of sweet spots that are going to arise from those effects being there. So when you're sort of turning these knobs, the way it's going to sound without those effects versus the way it's going to sound with those effects, the sweet spots are going to be different. So there is merit in leaving that stuff there. It's just not what I'm doing here. All right. Now we need a sort of, let's do wavetable for that. And I'm going to get rid of all these and do this. I'm going to do a pitch envelope right off the bat because we're going for like a percussive type sound. Yeah. And then we use the third envelope for the filter. And then let's modulate. Don't want retrigger on either of these. Let's do warp. Fold. I wish Ableton would add these to operator. Yeah. All right, let's add an arpeggiator. And expression control. do another random. And I guess we'll just kind of keep going with random. So when you turn the slides way up on the expression control, depending on how quickly the MIDI notes are coming in, it sort of turns into a sort of wander. So if you have it at 50% random, that means it's only going 50% from where it was. So let's say the voltage is right here. When the random comes in, it's going to go up at most 50%. And then from there, at most 50%. Whereas if you go 100%, now it can kind of go anywhere within the range that it wants. I'm going to go bipolar. Yeah. I guess I should have just brought my random thing in. One more. Yeah. All right, now we'll do maybe, oh, let's do auto filter. I can't find it. And comb. There's no comb in this right now. And then definitely a compressor. Yeah. All right. That sounds bad by itself. But it should work. How are we going to do this? Let's go 1/8. Turn the chance down. And what was the rim? Turn the chance down. And then get our chunk kick, our snare, our hat, do our, not overhead, open. And then here we'll just kind of add, let's say, yeah. We need another sound because there's an empty spot right here. What do we do? Let's just do another operator because that's super easy. And really, we can probably just get away with doing the normal, just modulate everything with expression control, that old thing. So we'll go here, here, do it. I'm sure this isn't any easier on the CPU. Duplicate. be quiet. Fine. So in this algorithm, this is kind of the final stage. So we can use this as our sort of VCA. So at most, this is kind of how long the sound is going to be. And then let's do a shifter. Map that to there. And we'll slide that one a little bit. Do a little bit of delay. And then let's do a reverb. And actually here, I'm going to group this and create an empty chain. So now we have our wet signal and our dry signal. So it's basically a 50-50 of the dry wet. But then I'm going to add an envelope follower. No, I don't need to do that. I can just do a gate. Oops. But an envelope follower is a little bit more interesting, I feel like. Yeah. I like the way the envelope follower follows. It's weird. Utility. Map this to here. So with this little button now, this is only going to go up 50% from where it's set. So since it's set down here at 0, when it opens up, it's only going to open up to 0 dB. But that's not what I want. I'm actually going to flip that and go down. So let's see what happened with this. I'm going to copy this, or cut it rather, and then I'm not going to copy paste anything else. So that way it's sort of held there in the keyboard, and then I can paste it back in, I think, once I hear what this sounds like. Let's see what it does if we go the other way. Yeah, I think that's what I want. All right, let's find a drum bus so we can... drum bus or OTT? Maybe OTT. Nah, drum bus. Whoa. All right. We need a compressor. Let's... Oh, I can't copy paste anything. Let me paste the beat back in there. Let's modulate the window. Oh, we're out of expression control things. Oh well. I'm going to turn the rise and fall down for the shifter. What happens probably go down. I'm gonna put a reverb on the open hi-hat. And then a compressor. Okay, so I'm going to group this. I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to create an empty change. Now we have basically a 50-50 mix. So that way I can just put the sidechain compressor on the reverb. Source, drum rack. Where's chunk kick? Nah. We can do the whole thing. Why can't I ungroup? Cut that, delete, and paste it. Just do it. I feel like that's not coming in often enough. Why isn't it coming in often enough? Do I need to turn that on? Yes. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is sort of set up our send and receive type thing. So these buttons right here, send and receive, nothing will happen with the send until we bring something in there. So for example, let's do delay. Put that there. And now we have our delay send here. So right here on send A, we can send this stuff to this delay. So I'm going to put this at 100%. But the other thing I'm going to do, the other thing I'm going to do is kind of make a bus. No, I don't think I'm going to do that actually. That is kind of a way that I'll do things where I'll send everything to a kind of like a separate bus and then have the effects separate. But I think in this one, I'm actually just going to keep it kind of everything open and have the effects and the actual kit. And then we'll kind of compress everything on the outside of the rack. So I'm going to put this here, ping pong, and then I'm going to find a utility. I'm going to put the utility here, and then I'm going to select everything and turn the send up to 100%. So now everything is going through this delay. Makes sense. So now all we need to do is turn this up. And as we've done many times before, we'll just use an envelope MIDI. I'm going to map this to here. I'm going to turn velocity off because it won't open all the way if you don't send it, full velocity. And I don't want to have to think about that. So just something like that. So now, whoa. Yeah. I don't like that open hi-hat happening all the time. It's annoying. The next thing I'm going to do is find an expression control and smooth this random out. Go bipolar. I'm going to map this to here. So now every time we trigger anything to go into the delay time is going to be randomized. I'm going to pull this down a little bit so it doesn't go quite all the way open. Yeah. We'll modulate the filter and the width as well. So I'll come back over here, go to random, and random, bipolar, and bipolar. Now, actually, I'll smooth these out a little bit as well. And then map these to the filter and the width. Why aren't they moving? Oh, that's right. It doesn't always show up. If we switch it over to remote, it will, which is weird. Yeah. It is moving, apparently. All right. That's good. So we'll rename this delay and move on to another one. Let's do something like vocoder. All right. No. Like this. And then we'll find another utility. Put that here, turn this down, come over here, copy this, come back over to here and paste it. And then we'll rename this vocoder. And then I'm going to map this to here. Now, vocoder can kind of get overwhelmed and sort of clip out. So I'm going to turn this way down so that it's barely sending any audio into this. Yeah, so you can see it's barely turning up a little bit. Put this on maybe pitch tracking. Can we hear? Let's see. If we find a utility and turn it way back up, is anything coming in? No. Why? I guess if we solo this, it won't work. Does it gotta go up even more before it even picks it up? Come on, just do the thing. We're gonna blow our ears out. I'm gonna find a compressor just to see if anything is coming in. Ah, very stupid. I'm not sending anything there. Now I'm gonna blow my ears out. Now I'm gonna come back over here and turn this back down to 7. So will solo work? Yes, it will. Let's do a drum bus. coming through. So I'm going to group this, duplicate it, and just slightly change some of this. Maybe go to 32. And then I'm going to find an EQ. I don't think I need all that. Yeah. And then I'll do a delay to kind of get some of this to ring out a little bit. I'm going to come over here to the envelope and map this to the delay here. So that way it kind of modulates the same every time, sort of like a trigger. Do a little bit of attack. Yeah. And now I'll modulate expression control. I'll modulate this actual envelope just a little bit. We can go a little bit more aggressive on the actual sustain. Maybe even the release. We'll do a little bit. Yeah. All right. Now, that sounds the same every time it's coming through, but remember, it's the same exact sound. So this is looping right now, and it's only ever these sounds coming through. So as the beat sort of changes, and when you're sending everything to the vocoder, the sound will sort of organically change, if that makes sense. So don't worry about this being bit static. Let's see if we can hear it in the actual mix, though. Yeah. A little bit annoying, isn't it? I think it's actually the delay making it annoying, though. Yeah, it is. All right. So what I'm going to do is come over to my expression control, select random, and I'm going to map this. I'm going to leave it at unipolar and come back over here to the delay, dry, wet. So now we're not always getting that watery delay. And then I think I'll do a beat repeat. And how I'm going to trigger this is going to be a little weird. But what we're going to do is we're going to group this. And I'm going to find a random. And I'll put the choices at 2, I think. Yeah. Okay. So now I'll constrain this. So we're always going to get the vocoder envelope. But if I duplicate this, Turn the chance up a little bit. And I just cut that bottom note out. Sometimes we're getting both envelopes. Does that make sense? And you can actually kind of adjust the randomness, if that makes sense. So you could just like turn the chance way down. So there's just a very slight chance, but then you can sort of add chance on top of that by how many notes get selected. So right now it's either 1 or 2. And you can see that there's actually 3 notes getting selected because it's the incoming MIDI note plus either 1 random note or 2 random notes. So now it'll just be that one. Yeah. Yeah, so now there's 2 notes. So every time this gets triggered, there's a 35% chance that either this envelope will trigger, or no, I'm sorry. There is a 35% chance that this second envelope will trigger. And now I forgot why I set this envelope up. Let me see. For the beat repeat. Okay. So I'm going to put this in on remote, turn the attack down, the decay down, sustain up, velocity off, and release down. And now I can map this to the beat repeat. You could just use chance here. Why didn't I just do that? The reason I didn't just do that is because since we're triggering this effect, there's a chance that it's going to be sort of triggering either like after the sound has been triggered or just before, something like that, if that makes sense. Whereas with this, I know that when I tell the vocoder and all this sort of stuff to turn on, that if the beat repeat is going to turn on, it's going to turn on when that note hits. Does that make sense? And also, because now we can use this as a gate. So if I increase this, it's going to stay on for that whole MIDI note. What I am going to do though, actually, is add a delay here in front of this envelope. So if we go note echo, we can use this as a gate delay. So I'm going to turn sync off and just turn it down somewhere like this, turn feedback off and mute the input. So now there's just a little bit of time for things to run through that effect before the beat repeat grabs it. So now there's usually always going to be some sound in there. Yeah. All right. On to the next effect, which, what are we going to do for the next effect? I'm going to save these 3 up here for roar to do something I've done in the past. So I'm not going to do roar. And I feel like I just do the same effects over and over again, but some of that is kind of just because certain effects just work. Like, they're not too crazy. They add a lot of interesting to the character, a lot of interesting character, but you know, it's not like, for example, like the spectral resonator and spectral time, spectral blur, all that sort of stuff. They really do have interesting sounds, but one, I feel like they are, again, kind of heavy on the CPU. I've also had them sort of clip out. Like I'm even a little bit nervous about using vocoder because I've had that sort of, I don't really know what happens, but it's like if you send in a sound that's too hot, it feeds back on itself or something and clips out and just stops working. And I don't know, there's nothing wrong. If it's not broken, fix it. All right, same thing. I'll do utility. And this time I'm going to remember to turn everything up. And I'll turn this down. And on this chain, I'll do an envelope MIDI. Add this here. Map this to here. Turn velocity off. I'm going to turn the attack up a little bit slower so that way there's not a huge amount of clicking happening when the sound goes into the reverb. And let's rename this. Yeah, and then get our expression control in there. And I'm going to swap this out for the random one because I know that's what I'm doing with it. And then I'm going to definitely smooth these out for reverb. And then let's go. I'm really not crazy about size. Something about that like swoopy sort of sound it does. I just am not that much of a fan of it. I'll let the decay get pretty big. Why is this orange? Come back and do this, I think. Yeah. And I think that's all I'm going to do for right now when modulating the reverb. But what I'm going to bring in is, what did they change the name to? Auto pan tremolo, is that the one? Yeah. I wish they hadn't done this. I liked the way it was before. I always want the reverb to be kind of big. Yeah, so now we can map this to the frequency and this. I'm going to turn the slide down and go to the amount. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. And one more effect. What kind of effect? Redux? Overdrive? Anybody that's actually still watching this, I'm sure there's some of you that are like, use this. What's wrong with you? But I can't hear you. we'll do auto filter. And comb. And then the same thing. Utility. Turn that down. I think I can just do this. Filter. Map this to here. Oh, that's got to be capitalized. I don't know why. Because why? This is such a mess down here. Whatever. Let's go here. Let's not do that. Let's do another envelope and see what it's like if we do this. Oh, I shouldn't have deleted that expression control. I needed it to modulate this envelope. Did I really do that much? Why can't I control Z it back in? Fine. All right, I'm gonna map this to here. Let's put this up here. Did the thing again. Chonk kick. Oh. Whoa. That's not as cool as I was hoping. There, that's better. All right, now we can modulate this envelope with a random expression control. Just do the thing. There. And then I'm going to kind of constrain these a little bit so we don't get like a multi-second attack or decay or release. Let's go to the delay time. That's what we want. It's always kind of that where it ends. It always sounds the exact same, and it's because the envelope is always kind of coming back to the same spot. Since we map that with modulatable expression control, we can actually double map that if we use this remote. So we can map this over top of that. So now it's always going to kind of land at a different spot. We just need to constrain it some so it doesn't go too far out of whack. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to find a roar, and we're going to use these 3 envelopes to do something that I've done in other racks and kind of boost the low, mid, or high. So we need, do we want to just constantly send everything through roar? Let's try it and just see. So I'm going to select this all the way up to here, turn these up, and watch your ears. We're getting doubled up because everything is going to the rack output. So instead of that, I'm going to do E roar. And then I think, yeah, that turns these off. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to find envelope MIDI, and we'll do low, whoa, low, mid, and high. Oh, I should have done this before I duplicated them. It's fine. No, it's not. I don't feel like doing that every time. So I'm going to copy that. Come over here to roar. Map that to the low. Come back over here. Delete that and paste in. Oh, God. I don't feel like changing these settings for each one. So now we're going to go back here to mid. Map this to the mid. And then this last one to the high. So now we can sort of boost particular bands. And then maybe we'll add an envelope for the feedback. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to do the way I had it before. And have this roar be on top of the max. It's not very apparent, is it? Let's add a drum bus and see if that brings it out. Oh God, not a drum rack. Let's see. Did this? I haven't saved anything. Eesh, this could be bad. Yay. All right. I should probably save this. Where am I? All right. Not drum rack, drum bus. Digital, do a tube, do a noise injection. Okay. And then the last one we'll do, I think, feedback. So envelope MIDI. And I'll do something like that. Yeah, and then I'll modulate the time with an expression. Actually, isn't there just a random rate in this? Simplex. And we're going to go to time. Yeah. Maybe we'll also... Oh, no, I'm not, that's not what I want. This. Yeah. Okay, good. Now, everything is running through that, so that's one mix. I think I'm going to find an EQ3 and get rid of some of the low end going into that. Yeah. And then I'm going to find a drum bus. Put this here, and I'm going to send all of these sounds into the drum bus. And be careful that we're not overtaking the effect. All right, so let's see what happens with everything. I'm just going to do it like this. And I'll turn the chants down and duplicate those. Rename this glitch. Rename this glitch to name this feedback. Yeah. So a real glitchy beat like this might benefit from a more simple beat underneath of it, as in like something that's just not crazy glitchy all the time. What do we have on the 2? All right, there is some clipping happening in here, and that's the one thing that I really don't. I wish that Drum Bus allowed you to do, like, to send these effects to another. You get what I'm saying? Another bus, but since we can't. Copy this. Get a compressor on here. Get drum bus. Reverb. Get the compressor. Auto filter gets a compressor. It won't go. There it is. And the roar has a compressor, but I don't know if it's the same. Oh, we put this drum bus here. Yeah. Not really clipping now, is it? A little bit. So we'll turn all of these down. Actually, I think instead of doing that, I'm just going to come in here, select all of these, turn the volume down a little bit. And the effects, I'll turn the effects down maybe 5. Yeah. So with all of this, I can probably almost get away with doing this. Turn the chance down. Let's see. Does it work? Let's shorten them. The overhead hat sucks, doesn't it? Let's fix that. I just don't like overhead hats. That's all there is to it. Maybe that's a little better. Now, normally, like if I was, I don't know, like making this rack as something to release on Isotonic, this stage of sort of, you know, sort of setting up a beat, trying it with another beat, going in, making some adjustments, going in, making more adjustments. Like, that'll go on for a really long time. But I'm not really doing, like, there's no trick there. Like, there, it's just sort of using your ears, listening for things that happen that you don't really like, and going in and sort of attenuating, or, hearing things that you do like, and, making small adjustments to bring that stuff out. Especially on things like the expression control, for example, where there's so much random throughout this whole rack. There is kind of a lot to be said for going in and basically limiting how much random happens, whether that means sort of how often does the expression control get triggered. And you can do the same thing that I did with the envelope, where you sort of stack or group two envelopes and then constrain with the key zones, to where sometimes the expression control gets triggered, sometimes it doesn't. All of this sort of stuff, you can really spend a lot of time there doing that sort of stuff, as well as adding in some sort of macros on top of the rack. So, for example, just coming in and selecting things like warp, fold, maybe a couple other things, and assigning that up to one macro, and then going to the snare and picking a few controls out. And you can assign a bunch of different things all to one macro, to where you have some sort of knob to sort of change all of the sounds at one time. So that way you can have a little bit more variation and almost get a new kit out of it just by turning that knob a little bit. But again, that's just sort of taking the time to sit there, map stuff, attenuate it, everything else like that. So if you made it through all of this, thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned some stuff. If you don't want to go through the whole process of sort of making the rack, I'll upload this to Patreon, where you can download it and have a look inside, make your own adjustments, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.